Okay, you've seen us tie the articulated trout slider. This is a smaller single hook version of it, and I'm going to show you how to do a perfect deer hair head every time. So check it out.
Dude, that's a big brown, bro.
Okay, this fly is one that I've been playing with for a little while. It's kind of a takeoff on my articulated trout slider. Now, if people ask me what my favorite streamer is, if it's articulated, it's definitely that trout slider. The properties of that fly make it move so well. And so I wanted to make maybe a little bit smaller, kind of darty sculpin. So this is kind of the idea here. This one has different eyes, but you can see that's just like a little mini sculpin pattern. I do them in a bunch of different configurations, but I think this one that we're going to show you right now is probably the best. Just pick whatever olive thread you like. This is a fulling mill streamer stripper hook, but you can use like a Gamakatsu B10S. Critical that it has a wide gap, because the head of this fly is going to be on this side of the hook, and you need a wide gap so it doesn't close that gap off too bad. I'm going to start out by putting these eyes. Now these eyes are super cool. These are tungsten, so under these double pupil painted eyes, it's tungsten, made by Fulling Mill. And so just with a little tiny bit of an eye there, you're going to be able to get down a lot better. I've got a bunch of marabou stuck to my fingers, so sorry for that. Hopefully that doesn't drive you crazy. Let's see if I can clean that off real quick. Nope, it's on there for good. All right, so I'm just going to do some figure 8 wraps on this, bunch of turns one way, then the opposite direction, a few snug turns underneath, and we should be good. I'm going to tag it with a little bit of super glue, even though we're going to pack a pretty decent sized head right behind those eyes so they won't twist. All right, body on this is just going to be ice dub. So I'm going to make a little dubbing loop, close off that dubbing loop, and then bring my thread all the way forward. Grab your favorite dubbing twister. Today it looks like I'm using the old Wasatch. Oh, there's some thread on there. But anyway, cool twister. Spins like crazy. It's got a little handle. Anyway, kind of a cool little tool. So just pick out your favorite dubbing twister. I'll take some ice dub. You can see I pull it out of the corner of the bag. So here's the bag. I cut the bottom corner. And if I do that, when I pull the fibers out, they all just kind of automatically line up. So when I stick that in my dubbing loop, the fibers aren't crisscrossed too bad, and if I make a body out of those, they'll brush out really easily. So we're going to have, you know, a fair bit of flash in there. Twist those up, already done. And then I like to use some sort of brush tool to brush that out. The good old Stompo comb's been going for a lot of years, so I'll just keep on using it. From here, I mean, I could lay it all out really nice and make sure none of the fibers catch or anything, but that's what a comb's for. So I will just wrap that forward and brush that out just a little bit with the same Velcro brush. So that's going to kind of ride just like that, because this fly rides upside down or hook point up. I want to taper this in the back just a little bit. We're going to have some rabbit going in over the top. It helps to have really sharp scissors. These, what are they called? Renomed or Renomed or whatever. They're really, really sharp. Good stuff. All right, so the next step is I'm going to put a zonker strip on it. I just use the normal rabbit. So on the end of that rabbit, I've got just a blunt tip of leather. So another cool thing about these is they're really fine, these scissors. So I can take those, I'm just going to show you. If I hold these fibers back with my fingers, I can come in like this and cut out a little angle. See how I did that? Hard to see, I know, with this, but I'm just going to do that to both sides. But I'm going to do this one down here so I can actually see what I'm doing. Alright, so at the end of the day we end up with a little triangle taper like that. It's actually pretty critical. It makes the back of the tail really wiggle, and then I actually come in here and trim out some of the leather so the leather's not quite so thick back there. Just these little things like that will make your streamers swim differently. Alright, so at the end of the day I end up with a little point like that. And so I'll just lay my zonker on here. I want it to be about, like, I don't know, that long-ish, so the hook's going to poke through it. Just mark that spot with my thumb and just stick your hook through there. Once the hook is through, I turn my vise back right side up and then attach the hook upside down in the vise. Let me try to get it straight for y'all. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to pull that zonker strip over. I'm going to find the part of the hair where the tie-in section is going to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a fancy bodkin and just going to poke through, make a little part just like that. So I've opened up that zonker strip. I'm not going to trap down any fibers, no additional bolt. So I just can kind of moisten my fingers and that should stay just like that. And then I'll tie that down. And then with these scissors I'm just going to poke through and cut the leather. So it makes a pretty clean little tie-in point, looking like that right now. So from here I'm going to attach some GSP thread. 200 denier is what I use. You can definitely use 150. If you go down to 100 or 50 or 75, those GSPs can be too thin and they can cut through the deer hair. So it's going to have a pretty gnarly deer hair head on it. And anyway, first thing we'll do, you can really use any deer hair you want. This is a primo strip that I kind of farm through. What I'm looking for in deer hair is really long fibers that are usable, not a lot of underfluff, and when you squeeze it, it kind of has that pillowy feel. So when you're selecting deer hair for stuff like that, those are some of the things that I look for. Pillowy. If it has to do with food or sleep, I'm in. So pillows, you know what I'm saying? Can't sleep without a good pillow. So I'm going to cut off about that much hair. So that's a lot of hair. Now, this part of the video, this tying with deer hair can be intimidating or it can be simple. I mean, this method is a really good way to start tying deer hair. It shouldn't be too intimidating because you're just putting it on one side of the hook. Anyway, get you a little comb out the deer hair. You got to get all that underfluff, any of those broken fibers out of there, because those will kind of impede the flaring process that we need. Okay, so with all those out of there, put it in a giant hair stacker. This is the Peak. It's really good. Give it a little stack. And we're almost in business. So here we have the head. I'm actually going to stack that one more time. There we go, much better. I like the way those tips line up a lot better. Now these tips, the head's not going to be super long, but when you tie these tips in, I like to put it all the way back to the bend of the hook, because they flare out and they definitely won't be that long after I tie it in. But I'm just going to grab that with all my fingers. I'm going to take my GSP 200 denier and just do 2 really loose wraps around that. So if I turn it that way, it looks like that. Just 2 turns, that's all you need. So I'm going to flare this. It's not spinning, it's not packing, it's just flaring. And the other thing is, to make this head really tight, I'm going to put another clump of deer hair right on top of this one. So I need to make a little divot in this so that when I tie that deer hair in, it doesn't trap down too many fibers from the other color. So I'm going to put my thumb on top, I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to pull it forward this way. So see the angle of my thread? I'm just going to pinch down as I pull forward, and I can pinch down pretty tight. You don't want to pull too hard. You'll feel when it ends. If you pull too hard, it will just cut through that hair and it falls all off your hook. So here is a little kind of a divot that I'm going to put the other piece of hair in, or clump of hair. So I'm going to do the same thing with some brown hair. And if I'm doing a bigger fly, I am definitely going to use more deer hair. But this is a size 4 in the streamer stripper. It's pretty small. Alright, so I'm just going to take this piece of hair and I'm going to lay it right on top of the other clump. So I've got that other piece, I've just laid it right in this little divot. I'm going to take my thread and just very gently come up, wiggle through one side, wiggle down through the other. No tension so far. I'm going to do 2 turns like that. That's what it looks like, just bound in. It's the length that I want. And I'm going to do the same pull, but I'm not going to push down with my thumb this time. I'm going to take my fingers and just kind of brace the other side of the hook. And as I pull forward, sometimes that brown wants to slide to one side or the other, but as I pull forward, you'll see it all just flare all together, just like that. Alright, so that's all tied in. Do not wrap any more times through the hair. It'll hold perfectly. When we trim this, you'll see how tight of a pack that is, just with literally 4 turns of thread holding all that in there. Okay, so now, see under there, right where the thread comes out, there's just a bare spot. So I'm going to cover that up with some just ice dub. So this is kind of a weird technique, but essentially I'm going to take some ice dub, and I have it kind of all preened out the same length, and I'm going to lay it on here and just wrap around the eyes. If I can do it without trapping too much stuff down. So 2 turns of thread to wrap the eyes down. So I'm looking just like that. So my thread should terminate right here, right behind the eye, right in front of that fiber or the ice dub. And I'm just going to take some super glue and mash it down in there, and that will serve as our whip finish. So I'll cut that off and then take all those other fibers and brush them into the other fibers, and now we're good. Okay, now what to do with this big Sideshow Bob looking clown deer hair here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a double-sided razor blade. And yes, I have read the comments that I should use a tool when I do this. You're actually much more likely to cut yourself putting the blade in the tool than actually just using the blade. Some people say break it in half like this. So I don't like to do that because I like to put my fingers on the edges. It gives me plenty of stuff to hold on to. And with this fly, I'm going to curve the blade. So if you're doing that with just a little bit of surface area right here, it's really hard to do. So I just prefer to hold it in my hand. I've cut myself just little tiny nicks here and there, but you know, if you get used to doing this, you shouldn't have any issues. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come up under the fly. I'm going to curve the blade like this. Come up under the fly, and I should be able to get most of it with one cut, just kind of rotating it back and forth just a little bit. See all those falling down like timbers in a forest? There we go. And just one cut like that should be pretty much what we need. So see how these fibers didn't trim? I'll just take some scissors in here or just pull those out. Alright, but the critical part of these sculpins is that there needs to be fibers that go up there needs to be a transition right here, right in front of the collar, and that needs to go up at more of an aggressive angle if this fly is going to swim right. But anyway, that's pretty much the fly. I'll brush it out and kind of show you what it looks like, not all jammed up in the vise. But with this ice stub and the head, this little thing is going to move like crazy. We've actually fished this a fair bit. I've fished it quite a few different times, different places, technical water, non-technical water. The fish really, really like this fly. And the biggest key is those are tungsten eyes. So that thing's going to plummet down. Now, here's a little hack. And keep in mind that before we kind of settled on the final pattern, there were rubber legs on this fly. Here's an example of that. So I had a little bit of rubber legs, but look at this head. So this head is totally flat on top. That's a wedge head style. And the way that I got that is, imagine taking this same fly, and I'm just going to leave the blade flat, and I'm just going to come up from under and just do one cut like that, and then a cut on the side, and then on the other side. So wedge heads swim great as well. I fished those quite a bit. But anyway, here's a little sculpin that's going to move awesome, and the fish won't be able to resist. So yeah, check it out.